All right. Hello, everyone. Matthew Hagum. I am here today as one of the co-founders of the Accounting Alchemy Network, and I'm really excited to be putting the spotlight on one of our community members today, Nicole. We'll meet her in just a moment. But before we dive in, for those of you who might be new to the Accounting Alchemy Network, just a reminder, what we are here to do is really to help the accounting profession be a vehicle for positive social transformation. Ingrid and I came together with a wild hair of an idea about a year and some change ago. And as we began this journey, we really began to understand that accounting professionals in particular sit in a really powerful position, frankly, to influence their clients, to influence the community, and to really think about how we relate and use money in our society. And so one of the things that we do, in addition to putting spotlight on community members, is host social forums. We have our social media group. So if you're a part of our LinkedIn or Facebook group, please tune into that world to see what's next. If you're not signed up for our newsletter, definitely sign up for our newsletter, because we do only send it once a month. But when we do, all of the important details are in that newsletter about what's coming up. So that's my PSA. And with that, we're going to just dive right into a conversation today with Nicole Rose Yen. Is that how you say your last name? Yen? Nicole Rose Yen? Okay.
Rose Yen is the last name. I've got three names, shuffle them all up, like throw them out, but Nicole's my first name.
Okay, got it. All right. So, well, Nicole, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate your time and attention, not only to being our spotlight today, but also to the work that you've done with the Accounting Alchemy Network up to this point. So let's start off maybe with just something really simple and just learn a little bit about who you are. So maybe share a little bit about what you're doing today with Breakaway, and just kind of give us the lay of the land of who you are, and then we'll use that as a jumping off point. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm Nicole Rose Yen. I am a franchise owner inside of Breakaway. So you'll see a bunch of different franchise owner, Matthew, you included. And we all sort of get to do things our own way. So when I started, my initial idea was just I wanted more freedom. I've been working remotely for 10 years, but it was really rigid. Like, 9 to 5, show up, be on your computer. Nevertheless, I was really thankful for that. But I thought there's more. There's more out there. So I joined up with Breakaway, and indeed, I did get my free time. At the time, I had sworn, like, I will never have employees. I won't have any complications. It's just going to be me. And as it turns out, I realized that my dream is bigger than just a one-person job. So started bringing on folks to support me. And luckily, Accounting Alchemy Network came along, and I was able to link in and learn a lot about humane workplaces and try to figure out how I can both free myself and everyone that I work with, because I often see, especially in the accounting space, they build a team, they're liberated from their time and their location, but they've really just like shackled another person in their place. And so trying to understand how we can create a situation where everyone has that freedom to go out and enjoy their lives while also making an impact with the businesses that we work with.
Got it. Yeah, and I really appreciate not shackling people. It's an important thing. And we'll talk about sort of your principles and your attitudes around leadership in a moment. But before we do, I guess I want to talk a little bit more actually about Breakaway and sort of why you chose to work with Breakaway. And I know I first met Breakaway at QuickBooks Connect last year. I can't believe it was only a year ago. And one of the things that I remember was this concept of of assisted entrepreneurship. And that was sort of the thing that drew me to the conversation. But what got me more interested when I met Shay and Michelle was this focus on joy, right, as like the core operating value of the organization. So I'd love to maybe hear a little bit about what your relationship is to why you chose Breakaway.
Yeah, so I believe the tagline is something, and I'm not a marketing person for Breakaway, but I think it's work for yourself, not by yourself. And I come from a family of entrepreneurs, so I'm very aware of the kind of work it takes to run your own business. And I have always sworn I will never have my own business. I'm not going to do that. That takes a lot of fortitude that I would prefer to channel elsewhere. So when Breakaway came along, I was like, okay, it sort of rides the best of both worlds while also, I guess, banding together. You know, that analogy of like all the sticks, it's easy to break one stick, but you come together. And exactly as you say about joy, it's so easy to talk about, but to have people to lean on and support you in that, I felt was really important in sticking with my mission. I moved because I wanted a better life for myself and my family. And then it just sort of expanded from there. And a lot of us come from very traditional accounting backgrounds where that's very rare. It's very difficult to find like-minded accountants. And luckily, the Accounting Alchemy Network exists to provide that kind of support to us. And then Breakaway comes in more on the day-to-day, which again, just even having people to bounce ideas off of is, for me, I think an essential part of actually towing the line, because it's just really easy to get lost with as much influence going on and sort of being more interested in what kind of post it's going to look like than really doing the work. So I think that combination of Accounting Alchemy Network and then Breakaway is a really natural fit for me.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get more into sort of what your recent work has been with the Accounting Alchemy Network and really what you hope to accomplish as things unfold. But I want to go back to, I every time I see a picture of you, like I love the photo that we have for you as your profile photo for the announcement for this webinar. It's like you're wearing this like beautiful, colorful onesie jumper thing, which is just like bright and colorful, and you've got a surfboard in the background, and I remember the pictures like and I'm highlighting this because I think what often people think, right, when they think about being an entrepreneur or being a business owner is like sacrificing something, right? Sacrificing your well-being, oftentimes your well-being. And you see a lot of CEOs and entrepreneurs and founders like working 90 hours, literally killing themselves for this thing that they're trying to get, with the hope that it becomes this thing. And what I really appreciate about who you are and what you stand for and what I've come to see and witness and how you show up in the world is that you're present to your well-being, and you're present to this sort of other life that you're living and leading beyond just working with your clients. So can you maybe kind of paint a little bit of a picture about sort of what your life is like so people know?
Well, okay, so I have to back up because when I was starting my business, I got a lot of advice that I found fairly elitist. So, okay, I'm just backing up, which is like only like once you choose the clients that you love, the money will find you. And that definitely works for some people, but I think that really works the more network you have. And I wasn't coming in with that kind of network. So the beginning was not so easy for me. It was really keeping my eyes on where I wanted to be and how I could spread that after I got there. Because, I started the business when I was pregnant, and I tell this story not to be a Debbie Downer, but if you have a business and you're struggling, I'm sharing this to tell you that there is another side, and that it's not always as simple as just fire all of your clients and then your heart's desire will show up, because that definitely wasn't the case for me. I started the business when I was pregnant, and I was working, with a baby in my lap, and it was hard. It was so hard. I wish I could say, oh no, I just put forth my heart and then everyone attracted themselves to me, because realistically, even with assisted entrepreneurship, it's a different kind of thing to manage clients for a different firm than yours, especially when those brands don't line up pretty closely. And my brand definitely does not line up, as you said, very closely with many firms that I could have worked with historically. So just if you are a person who wants to make a difference and you're in the trenches and you're struggling and you are working those insane hours, just keep innovating, like keep thinking about how you can get there. I think what I've seen is that people stop a little bit short, like they're getting there, but they just haven't got there yet, or they get there and their habit is so strong that they sort of forgot why they did it in the beginning. So just to sort of give a little love to maybe new firm owners who are in that place, I think just keep thinking about how you can approximate your firm closer and closer to where you want to be. Because in the beginning, it was like, oh, you have money, you're my ideal client, actually, because like I don't have, deep pockets to fund this thing and hold out for the perfect client. Like that wasn't my reality. It was just like, how do I stretch out the runway until I find my love matches? And luckily, as you said, now total love matches. I say love matches, those are my clients. Like all my clients are A clients. They're amazing. I love working with them. And it wasn't always that way. It was more the commitment to, okay, I know there's something better out there, and I'm just going to keep stepping forward. As I sign a new client that's a love match, then I can say goodbye to those clients who I'm so grateful for, but you are not my love matches. So it's just sort of client by client, day by day, getting closer to that. And then also holding yourself accountable, because it's easy to work a lot. Our culture facilitates people working a lot. So I schedule, and I wasn't always so good at this, right? But like, I was like, okay, I never miss a client meeting. My like circus hour each day is now a client meeting. I will never miss it. Like I can't move it. I wouldn't do that to a client, so I won't do that to me. I deserve that as well. And that being part of the evolution is helpful. And then of course, now that I have an established brand, then I get to do the surfboard and like choreograph circus acts. And it's appreciated because I have my love matches, and my love matches are telling other people about us. But that took time for me. That wasn't overnight. So if you're like, oh, how do I find my person? You will just keep getting closer and closer.
And let's stay on this topic of the love match, because I really like that sort of analogy, or that sort of way of relating to your ideal client. And let's be frank, for those of you watching, like one of the reasons why we do the spotlight is because we want you to understand as practitioners how do you make decisions from this place of being values driven, as what we refer to as a regenerative accounting professional. So my question for you, Nicole, is, one of the challenges that people have when they're running a practice is how to evaluate which clients to work with and which clients not to work with. So let us into your sort of world as you're sort of evaluating prospective clients. What is the framework that you use to evaluate? Oh, this is I can go on a date with this person, I can marry this person, or no, red flags, we're not going on a date, no thanks, goodbye. Like how do you make those decisions?
As an accountant, I am more on the analyst side of this. So I read the book, The Pumpkin Plan, which is a really good book. The author wrote, he has a more famous book, but my favorite one is definitely the Pumpkin Plan. And it is basically about finding which pumpkin grows best in your garden, and you only feed and water that pumpkin, right? Like you don't do the other ones. And this is where it's a little bit complicated, right? Because in the beginning, you're watering all the pumpkins. You're like, I don't know which one's going to grow. I had no idea which one was going to grow. I watered all of them. But then you can start to say, okay, well, this one really grew. This one withered on the vine. And so that's a really indirect way. But then how do you really put it into numbers? I have a spreadsheet that basically breaks down the type of, you just take all of your clients, list all of your clients, and then you're going to write down like the size of the engagement, the type of work, and then you're going to rate how much time it takes you. Like, is this a reasonable amount of time, 1 to 10? And this is all included in the Pumpkin Plan too. This isn't something that I created. As well as, is it the type of work that you like to do? Because sometimes it's confusing. You're like, oh, I really like this work, but doing it in this circumstance is not my jam, or these people are great. Like, we have to find a way to help them, but it's really outside of your specialty. And again, for me, I was like, water all the pumpkins in the beginning, and then just sort of start going with those bigger pumpkins. And it was this one spreadsheet that I got from the Pumpkin Plan. And it's something that we revisit, or that we try to revisit annually. I also send a copy out to all of my people, and they get to do it too, especially now that I'm less in the day-to-day. I want to make sure that the types of clients that we're working with are good for all, or if someone comes in and they're a better fit for one person or another, that I'm making note of that. And again, offering that same comfort to the whole team instead of just, this is the work that I like to do, especially since I'm not the one who's doing it as much anymore.
Yeah, got it. And I think it's Michael
Yeah,
Michaelowicz.
Michael Michalowicz,
Oh,
right?
Michaelowicz. Okay, yeah, yeah. And the other
Profit
book was
first.
Profit
That's what
First.
he wrote. Profit first. Uh-huh.
And I would say, just to be clear for those of you watching, for us, it's people and planet over profit. Yes, we want people to be profitable, and we want people to prioritize people and planet, which is why I love how you show up in the world, because it's very clear that you have a sense of balance and responsibility, not just for the profitability and the livelihood of your business as an operation, but you've demonstrated your commitment to the people who you work with and your values and all that stuff. And so thank you for being the role model for all of us. And so actually now I want to kind of think about that team part for a moment, right? So you brought this client in, you've decided that you're a love match, you've gone through your process, and you're passing this client on to your team members. First of all, give us a little bit of insight about who is your team, and then how did you form that team, and maybe what guided you in bringing that team together.
Yeah, so I actually will bring my team in really early. So before I even bid anything, I'll normally do the discovery just so that I know what we're talking about. And then I will talk to the group and say, like, these are the details. This is my take on it. We do have some, what I would say, requirements internally about having one solid administrator or someone to support us. So even if they have ideals that align perfectly, that's one thing that we do require. So I'll give a little summary of what their structure is like, what their revenue is like, and then a little bit about the way they do work and their industry. So if no one wants to take it, then we don't go forward, right? My compensation structure, fortunately, is such that everyone's compensated on the work that they do. So whether it takes a long time or short time, I'm like, if you find a better way to do it and you want more work, like, you can sell that time back to me. You don't have to fill your time, or you can leave, like, head out, enjoy a sunny day, whatever you want to do. So that makes it easier, which I know is legislatively not as simple depending on where you reside, but luckily that's an option available to me. So that's the first step. Like, does everyone have capacity? Is there someone on the team that's thinking, oh yeah, that actually does sound really interesting? They've sort of passed that first gate. And then after that, we're bringing the senior accountants in, who are going to be managing that relationship, to sort of understand, look in a little bit more. And then before I send the proposal out to the prospective client, they're overviewing it to say, okay, yes, this looks like work I want to do. This pricing looks fair. Let's go forward with it. So it's pretty interactive throughout. No one should be getting any clients that they're like, because I definitely solicit their input early and often.
Yeah. Well, and what I appreciate about what you're doing, which is sort of exemplifies one of the characteristics, I think, of a humane workplace and an ethical work environment that's a win-win-win for everybody, is that you're actually including your team in the decision-making process on what clients to take and what clients not to take, right? And I know some firms, the client comes in, and it doesn't matter what you think. This is the job that we're doing. They're paying us. Get over it, right? And I've seen pretty inhumane conditions for bookkeepers and accountants and controllers who are working for other companies, where they just get handed a client that doesn't treat them well, and that's problematic, right? And so I love that you're really empowering them to have a voice in that process of choosing to grow the business together and collectively. And excuse me. And that brings me, I think, to a follow-up question too. Sometimes it's just like dating, right? Sometimes you go out on a few dates, you think everything's great, right? And it's moving in the right direction. And then something starts to happen. And maybe you start to realize, oh, this actually isn't a good match. How do you address that? And yeah, like how do you address that in your practice? Like what's the protocol for you?
Yeah, so I don't do contracts over 3 months because for me personally, I feel like that's a bit more hostage taking to one or the other. Like you said, you don't know how it's going to end up. And so it's always been my opinion that we're all there of our free will and can leave. The reason why I do that 3 month minimum is because onboarding, everyone's gone through onboarding. Onboarding is like a tough process. If we're going to onboard, we definitely can't do it in less than a month. But then after that first 3 months, and depending on the onboarding, sometimes it's 6 months if it's a really complicated system that we're working through and setting up. So when I say 3 months or less, sometimes it's a little bit longer, but then after that, it's month to month. And people can just walk away, as can we. Of course, we wouldn't leave a client high and dry. But there was a situation where we said, this isn't working for us. And we did give the client a chance to respond and just basically said that, these things are happening. That's not aligned with us. And they changed. Like I think the reality is that sometimes when you have a love match, it's just things slip away, right? That relationship is always going to take work. But let's say it didn't, then you can find another match for them, right? Luckily, there's a lot of accountants out there and a lot that are situated to deal with that. But I also do get involved. There have been situations where if I feel like or I'm hearing things that aren't values aligned, then I'll go to the meeting or meetings to be an interrupt and just say, hey, wait a second, like how is that going down? But everyone can fire their clients too. If there's someone who's not treating us well, then that team could say, this is not worth it.
Hmm.
And I think that is a really good thing. The reality is that we can talk about abundance mindset, but even the most scarce mindset has to recognize right now that in accounting there is a serious shortage. And there's really, if we're putting up with abuse, and I've seen that before, abuse, it's because we at the top levels are allowing it. And I think that's where the firm owners or the managers, whoever is directing that client can step in and say, thanks, but no thanks. We're not going to play this game.
Yeah. Well, and it's a distinct word choice, the word abuse, right? To be frank. And I say that and I'm isolating that because I think what I've noticed in the accounting industry is there's been it's like this idea of tolerating something, right? Like we tolerate a lot of treatment that actually shouldn't be tolerated, right? Like, I mean, I think about the work hours that a lot of accounting professionals are putting in, and the sort of attitude that, well, you got to put in your time and climb the ladder, and oh, that's just how we do it around here. You got to work hard to, and it's sort of like there's this sort of tolerating really inhumane work conditions that I think has been fairly prolific within the industry, not just inside of practices, but also then how that translates to how our clients relate to us, right? It's like, I've seen people frankly mistreat their accountants because they see them as, oh, just like, oh, you're the number crunching monkey in the back office, do this, do that, do this, do that, and there's sort of no acknowledgement that actually they're a human being and they have feelings, and yes, accountants stereotypically tend to be maybe a certain way, or maybe not, but it's like there's stereotypes that we put onto accountants that dehumanize them. And so I'm glad that you actually empower your team members to speak up and say, like, hey, this client is not okay, and to the extent that they can actually fire them and let them go. And so tell me, okay, so we've talked a little bit about sort of that client journey.
Wait, I don't want to move on yet because you
Go
said
ahead, please.
something that
Yeah.
was really important. And I think, like you are a dancer, I do circus. I think that it's so important as accountants to bring that in even if it means that we wear, a pink suit instead of a gray one, whatever it is, because we've got to break this stereotype. It's incredibly detrimental. And like you said, when I say abuse, I think it no one is treated like a human, or no, that's not true. Okay. Often people are not treated as humans, people are treated as machines. I mean, I think that in a lot of cases, honestly, people talk to Siri with a lot more politeness than they talk to their accountant. So I would encourage everybody to just show up in a human form, and if you're not that stereotypical accountant, to push through that if you're in a financial position to do so. Because I also understand, I used to show up in a blazer and glasses and everything because I was like, I just really need these clients right now. But if you are in a position where you can do that, please do that for everyone else, and help to humanize. Like, we are not all nerds, although I think being a nerd is cool, but like, we have friends and family and interests and things that we all want to do, and really trying to make a conscientious push against that stereotype, which I think also opens us up to better work. So, okay, sorry, I
No,
had
I'm
to
glad.
dive
No, I'm
down
glad.
that.
Look, I'm glad you stopped me on that, because that you are spot on. And I see. I remember very early on in my career when I was moving from being sort of a beginner in the industry. I was a sales and marketing person, and then kind of evolved into a CEO, and took on more leadership responsibilities. And at one point, as the firm I was working with was growing, and I felt kind of a sense of obligation to acquire new clients and to do work a certain way. And I remember at one point I to put it bluntly, stopped being myself, right? Like, I started to like dress the part. I started to put on the suit. I started to, I started to, when people would ask me questions about my personal life that would reveal something about me that I felt like didn't align with sort of traditional values or stereotypes around accountants, I would sort of, divert the conversation. And, I remember at one point I was actually married and had a husband, and people would sort of come in and be like, oh, it's sort of the boys club, right? Oh, how's your wife? Like, you get into those conversations. And for me, it was like, how do I steer this conversation away? Because notwithstanding the fact that in sort of a heteronormative environment, it can be uncomfortable to be LGBTQ, but also, like, how might that affect my sales? Like, are they going to not give me a client because they don't like gay people? And like, what does that cause? And frankly, that was the beginning of a really challenging moment in my life, because what happened is it like created two people. It was like, there's the person I have to be at the office and in the public, and then there's the person I really am. And it's not healthy, to be blunt, but I think it's a reflection of this sort of like culture around what does it mean to be professional, what is okay to, who is okay to be in the office, who's not okay to be in the office. And frankly, some of those beliefs are rooted in racism, sexism, homophobia, and really distrust and hatred towards people for being who they actually are. And so I think thank you for pausing there, because I think one of the big questions that we ask ourselves in the Accounting Alchemy Network is, what is the problem with professionalism, right? There's a problem with how we've defined it. And if it means that, you talked about, coming in and starting this business with a child, right? I mean, I have a client who recently had a baby, and one of the interesting and unfortunate conversations we had was that having a baby was viewed as a disability in the context of benefits and how it was handled. It's like, how is having a baby a disability? Like, and what culture have we created that makes it not okay to bear a child as a natural process of being a human, and that's not something we can have in the office. Like it's shocking to me. Yeah, any comments or thoughts on I know we're in this space. I'd love to just vibe with you on it for a moment.
Yeah, only that I just want to acknowledge that being able to be who you are at work is a privilege. It comes from not needing that paycheck. So if you are a split person, and you have to be, like, my heart goes out to you, and I don't think that there should be a judgment on that, because it is a full reality. And when you find yourself in a position to let that go, like, please do that for everyone who's not in a position to do that. I think that's the important part. And like I said, like, a lot of people don't have that choice. So if you have that choice, please take it. I know it's not easy, but I think it's worth it.
Well, and thank you for signifying that it is a privilege, right? In if anything, there's sort of a, I recently left working with somebody because of the inhumane work environment that I was inside of, and I realized, there were layers to that relationship and dynamics, but one of the things that I realized is like, oh, I was tolerating this behavior because I had to have the money. If I didn't have the money, I couldn't pay my bills. If I couldn't pay my bills, I wouldn't have a home. I mean, it's literally, you're protecting your ability to eat and put a roof over your head, right? And so we have to acknowledge, I think, as employers in particular, that there's something particularly or can be something particularly oppressive, and maybe you're not even aware of it. It's like the dynamics of money and how that plays a role in controlling people, even on a subversive or subconscious level, particularly if there's trauma, or particularly if you're not a straight white male, right? And you don't have the unearned privileges of what that could mean, that there's actually some really complex sort of social, political, and economic structures in place that make it hard for people to actually be able to stand up for themselves. Which is why we need to, first of all, be the change that we want to see in the world and lead by example. And if you have privilege and you can shift the conversation, be the one to change the dynamics and be the one to advocate for something differently. Which brings me to your work now and sort of why you're committed really to the Accounting Alchemy Network. So maybe talk to me a little bit about, obviously you've got your own business, and running a business is a lot of work. And now you've volunteered to facilitate GCI, and you've attended events with us, and you're getting your sort of feet wet in this world around becoming an agent for positive social transformation in the industry. What's motivating you right now to move this beyond just your practice?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we need to balance people, planet, and profit. And how do we do that? How do we use the position that we're in to make better conditions for all? And I'm really grateful. And it's hard. It's hard because, like you said, so much of it is like ask a fish about water. I That is really difficult. So for me, the Game Changer Intensive and then choosing to lead that, I felt very much like, oh, we're swimming in water. I didn't, of course, we know that at an abstract level, but then how it appears and what it means has been really impactful. And I mean, honestly, when I started, it was for my own, like, I wanted to make a better work environment. I wanted to make a work environment where no matter where people were, either on the development of their career or the socioeconomic status, that they could show up without having to split themselves, because that's the root of the problem. Is that, like, where do jobs exist? 95% of accounting firms are like traditional firms, so you better show up as two different people. Even like if you're a white straight male, right? Like even then you have two lives. So if that's like what it is for the, then what does that mean for everyone else? So that has been really helpful, and I would love to help other people understand a little bit more of the water that we swim in and how we can choose differently to make water that's more agreeable for everybody, where every fish can shine their sparkly scales and not have to be hiding them under some drab stuff. So that was my main motivation. And then also plug for Jedi, which has been so far amazing. That as a new program, I hope that everyone who's watching this is either already enrolled in Jedi or ready to enroll in the next one, because it's been amazing.
Yeah, and for those of you watching, JEDI stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. It's a new program that we've collaborated with Janai Tien on in terms of addressing some of the DEI needs of our community. Nicole, I love this analogy, like asking a fish about water, right? And that's beautiful. And I think one of the sort of maybe behaviors or patterns that has been ingrained in us, I think, in a professional environment, and particularly in the accounting industry, when you need to check the boxes, like, did I file this form? It's a yes or no question. Yes. Is it accurate? Yes. Did I get the report? Yes. Right. So there's this like desire often, I think, in this industry, if anything, because of the conditions we're used to check the boxes, right? And then when you're done, you did it, you accomplished the goal, right? And what's important to understand about this work is that it's not something that you can just check the boxes and then say you're finished. That there's actually, as much as you can lead others and be the example, there's still much to learn and much to do for yourself as a leader. So it's like, you are growing as much as everyone else is growing, regardless of where you're at on this journey. So my question for you is, as you've become to witness the water and have learned perhaps more about yourself in the reflective work that's necessary here, what have you learned for yourself that was like maybe some aha moments or some like shifts in your perspective that that kind of help you to understand or see something just a little bit differently in terms of how you see the world and how you relate to your work in the world?
Yeah, I don't think for me the change has been quite so profound. I would say just keeping everyone in mind in interactions and everyone in mind in decision making, and trying to not focus on ourselves. I mean, we were born this way, right? Like, we're born to worry about me, and then just that reminder of, hey, here's all of these different experiences. Here, like, when we have one story, how does it affect other people? And just taking that 360 view and making the commitment, like you said, to continue thinking about, even just thinking about other people or thinking about the planet, because it's easy to just, zoom, like, it's done, there's the answer, it's right in front of my eyes. And I actually would maybe propose a different thought. I don't do taxes, so I don't check boxes very often. Obviously, I do check boxes, but I actually think that there are a lot of improvements that we can make for businesses in many different aspects. That is an ongoing journey. It's not just closing financials. We have a lot of information and a lot of access to information and insight that the majority of folks in an organization don't have. And I think if we just breeze past that to get the financials out, to file the taxes, whatever, then we miss an opportunity to tell a story of where they're at that they maybe aren't seeing or are not wanting to see. Because it's people's baby, like, their baby is perfect, it's beautiful, like, chubby, look at it walk, it's amazing. But maybe you say, like, but have you looked inside of that baby's ear? Like, I think there's something wrong. I think you need to go to a doctor. And so I actually think that as we talk about humanizing accounting and understanding it as a really variable field with a lot of options for improvements and change, we can, not only do we see the whole world that way, but we can actually serve our clients better. And that can show up obviously in increasing their profits, but it can show up in increasing the conditions for the people who work there, helping guide them toward more responsible suppliers, whatever that means. I think we can do all three at the same time. I don't think it's, oh, cut out profit, like we're all for the planet now, or okay, our employees are now volunteers because we love the planet. I think we can do honestly all three. But like you said, it's just like DEI. It is a constant effort. You have to continually be looking and evaluating because you may generate the financials, but like you never arrive.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to ask just a question about GCI more specifically.
Mhm.
Because what we've come to, so for those of you who aren't aware, GCI is the Game Changer Intensive. We've been collaborating with the Pachamama Alliance, which is an amazing nonprofit organization, because they provide some really awesome educational tools. And what we found in this community and in this network is that there's a base of knowledge that's useful to have, right? And a general awareness of key issues that's valuable to have. So that as you're doing this work, as you're expressing yourself as a regenerative accountant, that you have some things that you kind of understand and that you're aware of, right? And you are now facilitating a GCI experience. What has been, if you kind of look back at your journey and think about GCI specifically, what is one of the maybe highlights for you from having engaged with that body of work, and why do you think really GCI is such a valuable tool to bring accountants into this conversation?
Uh, I mean, I think accountants are so much more, I guess, is what it comes down to. And why Accounting Alchemy Network exists is that we sort of shuffle into the stereotype of like, this is what we can do, we can check the boxes. And going through GCI and like seeing I forget what is something like the 10 traits of a game changer. And even going through something as simple as that and keeping in your mind, it's almost like mantras. Like, what mantra am I going to do? What game changer trait am I going to try to show today? And applying that to accounting, because I think there's, in a way, a sense of hopelessness that accompanies the accounting profession. Like, this is what we are. This is, like you said, this is what we'll always be. And that's just not true. So I think looking at all of these different, not only having the support of other accountants and seeing how they're applying the game changers, because I think that the group is the most valuable thing, because it's like, oh, I had never thought about that way. Like the power of story, or all of these different aspects, but like seeing how others apply it, like that was really smart. I could do that in my firm. Is so helpful, not only just to be like, okay, we have a lot of options. We don't just generate financials, but to be keenly aware of, not only places to start, but also what successful action other accountants have taken. So I love the group. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that, and I'm pretty sure that this is accurate. So if I'm misstating this, please correct me, and I apologize. But if I'm not mistaken, you give a percentage of your profit, right, to a cause. Is that accurate?
That is not profit, of revenue. This is top line, baby. Yes, I do 1% for the planet, or 1% for the planet certified organizations. They wouldn't have to be certified, but it is really nice to just know that they've been vetted and okay, yeah, they're an acceptable percentage of your dollar goes to the cause. So I really liked the idea of paying rent to the planet. That made a lot of sense to me. It's a place where I like to live. I don't know where I would live if I didn't live on the planet. And realistically, we are using a lot of the planet's resources. So it just made a lot of sense.
Well, and yeah, and I highlight that because I remember early on, and for those of you watching, if this is your first video with us, check out our YouTube channel because we have a lot of awesome interviews with people. And one of the conversations we had, I can't remember her last name. I think Mayumi something. I can't remember her last name right now, so I apologize. But she was connected to an organization called B1G1, right? Buy one, give one, and it's if I'm correct in my memory, it's sort of a mechanism for allowing you to basically, every time somebody buys something, you give something, right? And it's kind of the similar concept of like, giving, every transaction results in something that you give back to a cause of concern, doing important work. And I highlight that because, first of all, it's something that you're doing, and it's valuable, but also it's like, there's simple things like that you could do, that maybe you don't have the capacity to excuse me, to participate and facilitate a GCI experience. Maybe you don't have the capacity to be in even in this community. And I say that, and please, we believe, even if you just show up and subscribe to the newsletter, like just becoming aware and spreading the message does count, right? But I say that because there's actually things people can be doing, right? That are whether it's thinking about your hiring, how you hire your clients and work with your clients, and what sort of mechanisms you have in place to protect the humanity of your organization, through to what you're doing with your money, and how you're directing that energy in the spirit of protecting the planet and the resources of the world. That and even like going through GCI yourself as a leader, right? Educating yourself so that you can become the example when you go into the office, and hopefully that can inform some of your conversations with your employees and your clients. I mean, there's a way that we can be and evolve into, that is available to us, and it's right there. And so I guess my question for you, along those lines, is, one of the biggest challenges we have, I think, in the accounting profession in particular, where there are so much work to get done, and so seemingly so few accountants to do it, that there's this sort of, oh, I don't have time, right? I don't have time for that. There's too much for me right now. I need to. What is your invitation or your suggestion for maybe accountants who are trying to figure out how to get started in exploring this desire that they have inside of them? What's your recommendation to them?
Yeah, I mean, one, if you have a bustling accounting firm, then you can probably afford 1% for the planet. So that it's super easy. You just, like send over your financials. Although I guess we're accountants. If you're a firm owner, you better have your own bookkeeper. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. But you basically just send it over, and you can find the organization that you want to support. You can support multiple organizations. I personally have been supporting regenerative incomes and sustainable farming, because we all, in this world, right? Like, we all need to somehow make money. There's not very many people who can exist without making money. So if we can do that in a way that is planet friendly, then it's people friendly and profit friendly. So perfect win-win-win. Like, that's gold to my accountant heart. So, if you have money to give, go ahead and do that. If you don't, and even if you're just developing your business, you're like, I have a lot of time, but I don't have any money, reach out to nonprofits. There's a ton of business organizations. You can find someone aligned, offer a free training, even if it's just 1 hour of bookkeeping basics. That is so helpful to new businesses, and you can definitely find business support groups that are values aligned. So if it's not with money, if you have time and not money, or money and not time, there's definitely a way to do it. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Even like Matthew said, just showing up as you are and creating a place where other people can do that already makes a big difference.
Well, yeah, and even just showing up as you are is doing the work, right? Because it goes back to the conversation we had about professionalism. It's like, okay, maybe get rid of that dress code that requires people to be a certain way in your office, because actually that's perpetuating something that maybe doesn't need to be perpetuated, right? And so I think it's kind of cool, because part of the invitation is to just show up authentically, right? And and I love that, because I mean, in some ways it's kind of sounds easier. It's easier said than done, right? I mean, let's be real. A lot of people have I myself included, like, I have to remind myself, don't, it's like, I'll give you a perfect example. Today, I was like, oh my God, should I take off my hoodie? Should I put on a button-up shirt? I'm doing this interview. Like, what are people going to think if I'm wearing my hoodie? Like, is there a I went through that cycle for myself because, there's some people in the professional world to be like, wait, he's got tattoos and a hoodie and he's doing business, like what is that, right? So but I had to have that conversation with myself about that it's okay, right? And I love this idea because I wasn't really present to it until you started talking about it, but it's like the nonprofit sector, right? There's so, let's be honest and be real, like there's a very challenging circumstance that a lot of nonprofits find themselves inside of, that they just don't have the money to pay for all the things that they need to pay for. And one of those things that they need to pay for is accounting, but it's sort of a catch-22 because they can't always afford to pay for the kind of accounting work that they need. And so the idea of, if you're, let's say you're a QuickBooks Pro advisor, right? And you have that skill set and you care about animal welfare. Well, what if you offer a quarterly workshop and just teach nonprofits who are doing that work how to better utilize their QuickBooks software? Like, that's a huge give back that makes it possible for that nonprofit to keep going forward on their mission, right? And it's like a win-win because you're filling their cup, you're filling your cup, you're doing something good for a cause that's important. It's such a, I mean, I can't believe that. It's kind of funny because thank you. I can't believe that I'd never thought of that until you started talking about this idea. That's really
Well,
valuable.
let me add in another
Please.
factor then. Offer that opportunity to one of your juniors who maybe hasn't quite had a chance to shine, or maybe they're building their confidence and they don't quite have it. That doesn't have to be you. That can help build that confidence and knowledge of the people who are itching for that opportunity. So I do think you can like really round it out, and pass that on to someone who's, it's going to make a big difference in their career trajectory to have done that.
Wow. I never thought. So we always talk about the win-win-win. That's like a win-win-win-win, right? Because now you're also contributing to the, as you're saying, to the development of that employee and their evolution as a leader in that skill set, should that be something that they want. So that's really brilliant. So we are coming at the end of our conversation. Is there any other sort of thought or idea or final word you want to kind of put on the table for people who are embarking on this journey of becoming a regenerative accounting professional? What's sort of your final thought to share with people?
So I don't identify as a regenerative accountant because I feel like I'm too early on in the process. That being said, I think as accountants, we have this idea of a threshold, like once I can do all of these things, then I can start. Like I'm not gonna, but realistically, like so much of the research is undone, so much of the answers are unknown. I think we're relatively early on in this concept of a regenerative accountant or regenerative economies, even sustainable economies, right? Like we're so far in this world, and the only way that we're going to get somewhere is to have a group of brave individuals say, that's okay. I'm just going to do this thing. And then I'm going to do this other thing and this other thing. And maybe some things won't work, right? Like maybe it's in your head, you think it's great, you send like the junior over and then they have a panic attack or something. And you're like, oh my gosh, that was not humane. But if we don't try, then we're just doing the same thing. So I would recommend just do it. We don't know. Will it work? Will it not work? If it works, keep doing it. If it doesn't work, then try something different. But we don't have all of the answers. And the best thing that we can do is just start pushing that information out and sharing it amongst each other, because it doesn't exist. We're making it, right? And we make it by being brave and just doing the next thing and then letting other people know, oh, hey, this worked really well. Or, hey, I tried that. Maybe not so much.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. That's a really good sort of piece of advice. And I remember very early on when we were posting content in our social media feeds, one of the pieces of content, and I think this piece of content came to our table by way of GCI. It's, GCI has all of those supplemental fun videos that, to inspire and inform you. And one of them is, and this is a popular video, it's circulated beyond GCI, to be clear. So it's not a GCI video, but it's this video of this guy who is in this big field, and there's like some music playing, and he goes out into the field and he just starts dancing, right? And he's like the only one, right? He's the crazy guy who decided to be the one to start the dance party. But then what happens is that one person finally joins, and then another person finally joins, and then a few more people finally join, and then all of a sudden that one person has like ignited this entire dance party of people who are just living in this joyful experience. And it reminds me, and I think what you said is, it's like, you have to be willing to be that guy or that gal or that person. You have to be willing to be the one that stands up in the front and says, you know what? I don't know exactly what I'm doing, and this is new territory we're working in here. Let me just give it a go and be that example and lead by example and let that happen. So that's really beautiful. Thank you. So Nicole, thank you so much for your time today. You are an inspiration for all of us. I'm so happy to have you in the community. I'm really grateful that you're taking on leadership responsibility and leading GCI. And I'm really excited to see how your practice continues to evolve. We really appreciate your time today and your time always. And for those of you who are watching, please leave a comment below if you have any questions or curiosities or any thoughts or ideas about the things that we're discussing here. We really want to support our community in evolving and growing and expanding, so that we can bring together more people who are heart-driven and heart-centered and want to see a better world, and understand that the work that we do in the accounting profession is important and can have a powerful impact on prioritizing people and planet over profit. So have a beautiful day, and thank you again for your time. Bye, Nicole.
Thank you. Bye.